You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional relationship coach and intuitive matchmaker. If you haven't lately, go to wedeepen.com and check out all the upcoming social and transformational experiences that can help you have a more meaningful, loving, healthy relationship. That's if you're currently single or in relationship. We have something for everybody. Again, if you want a healthy relationship, we are the place to go. There are 3 upcoming experiences that I want you to know about right now. And these experiences are happening in the fall of 2023. So if you're listening to this at a time in 2024, the content of this episode is still for you, but you might miss these experiences, and to know they generally happen again. So if you're missing the 2023, know that every experience I share right now is repeatable. So the first one coming up is Kimmy Inch here in Austin, Texas, is a 4-day immersion on conscious kink, BDSM, erotic communication. Kimmy Inch is a pro dominatrix and a kink educator. It's a 4-day immersion. Yesterday I was in person here in Austin speaking at an event, and there was a woman who's in a relationship. When I shared with her about this event, she imagines that it was going to be like a 4-day play party, which would mean that there was a lot of sexual activity happening for those 4 days. And that's not it. It is an educational experience. Our curriculums in the primary educational system neglected sex ed. I mean, maybe you got a little bit of sex ed, but there's so much more to discover. And this is an experience you can go with your partner or with, somebody who's currently single, and you can discover more about your sexual and erotic blueprint. It's called Something More. It's happening here in Austin, Texas, October 19th through the 22nd. When you register through We Deepen, you get a special rate that is available nowhere else to join for this experience. And I'll be there so we can be together, and we can do it together here in Austin. And it's worth the travel. So come and be here for this experience if it's calling to you. Another one is the Unleash Transformational Retreat Festival. It's an intimate 200-person, fully expressed festival. It's a camp out. And it's happening in Sacramento, November 2nd through the 5th. When you register through We Deepen, you get an extra night to come in and join for that event. And Yadi Iksa is one of my best friends who facilitates this one. And it is an experience for you to tap more deeply into your deepest, fullest, authentic self-expression. People are wild, and they're dancing, and they're breaking free and removing any of the barriers that are holding them back, the fears, the negativity, the self-judgment, and being themselves. There's a mix of authentic relating, ecstatic dance. It's fucking fun. So check that one out. That's at wedeepen.com. And then also the Wonderland Conference is coming up in Miami, Florida. This is November 9th through the 11th. All of these, again, are 2023. And the Wonderland Conference is a psychedelic longevity mental health conference. It's over 4,000 people are gathering, and I will be facilitating the Dating Dojo, the Playful Portal, and a mind-blowing intimacy panel at this conference. Everybody who's a part of the new Love Club, which is We Deepen's matchmaking club that is in the process of launching right now, will be invited and get access to that event complimentary as part of their membership. But if you don't join us for that, you can still join for the event and get 20% off your ticket when you register through We Deepen. And it's perfect. If this is what it's perfect for. If you are currently single, one of the things is important to ask yourself, and specifically if you're over dating apps, is consider the type of person that you wish to date and go to the places where that type of person would be. So if you want somebody who's into longevity, mental health, psychedelics, this is the spot for you. Come and interact. I will be your tour guide for the event. So there's like, you have a smaller experience within a larger event style. We have our little group meeting and gathering on WhatsApp who's going to explore this conference together. So check it out. You can see all these events at wedeepen.com. If you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, follow it. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to host it. Give it 5 stars. And while this podcast follows my entrepreneur journey with building out We Deepen, combined with my personal dating stories and the lessons I've learned along the way, what I really enjoy most is being with you in real life. Us immersing ourselves in relationship education, play, joy, fun, meeting, being together, feeling the, community is such a buzzword, but feeling the essence of community and connection and chit-chatting about our love lives. That's the most interesting topic, is chit-chatting about love lives. And that's what I'm going to do here today with one of my friends, Allison Goldberg. She is the creator of Love Isn't Blind. It's a fun, hilarious show happening at comedy houses throughout the United States, LA, San Francisco. I mean, you have shows all over the place. And she's also created a breakup show. So this is going to be a really juicy conversation on your love life because we've got a comedian today. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Christina, I am so impressed by you because you're listing all these events. And as someone who self-produces, I'm like, damn, girl, that's a lot of events.
Well, the great thing is we curate those events. So We Deepen only produces about maybe 10 to 15% of the events that we share. I get to ride the backs off of your events and be your promoter. That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
Like be the promoter for the people. I go to the ones who I'm learning from, like Kimmy Inch. I'm learning from her. And I'm like, everybody should learn this information. Yeah. Like, I'm going to go source it and be the guinea pig and then share it with you.
I mean, kudos. But, there's so much behind the scenes work that people never realize. So I'm sure even in the promotion of that, like, it's a lot. So thank you. And let's move on.
Why do you do it? Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do it? Oh, I love what I do. I love it so much. I just love it. I mean, especially with this newer show, Love Isn't Blind. I would do it every night if I could. It's so much fun. The biggest barrier, honestly, is just that, first of all, it's a lot of work. And second of all, it's hard to find contestants. And I think it's something I have to work out. But I think my main barrier is that it's really fun if the audience thinks I can do whatever the fuck I want. I'm assuming I can curse on this podcast.
Bring it.
But then the men, the contestants, men and women, they get a little scared and they don't realize that behind the scenes, I'm really taking care of you. Like, I'm making sure everyone has a great time. I'm making sure everyone looks great. But I should back up and say Love Isn't Blind is a dating show where the men can't speak. So the men get a little scared. They think I'm going to roast them, but it's really not a roast show. And there are clips all over my social media. So I hope that comes across, that it's actually very silly and joyful.
I'm surprised that you're based in Los Angeles. I mean, doesn't everybody want to be famous in LA?
Well, I love this being a dating show for like smart, good people. Not that actors and actresses are not smart, good people, but like I strive to get. Actually, I make a lot of jokes on stage about how I have found 4 men with jobs and how often does that happen in LA. But, I use men who work in tech and work in advertising and work in gaming. My best men, there's a few things actually that's been really interesting. So first of all, I think the best men are men with so-called normal jobs, but they've like taken improv on the side for fun. And then something interesting that I think you'll like is that I found out early on, and it continues to be true, that some of my best men turn out it turns out they're sort of secretly in men's groups, which is very interesting. Yeah. And there's still a stigma attached. So they're not very forthcoming about it. But I find out later that some of my best men are secretly in men's groups. So now I've started to reach out to men's groups proactively and say, hey, I'm coming to your city. Do you have any single people who are up for shenanigans? Maybe they're tired of swiping. But yeah, it's men who are kind of like doing the work.
I love that. I think it's perfect for the men's groups. We have a lot of people within the We Deepen community who are definitely in that, women's circle, men's circle. So what exactly happens at it? Love Isn't Blind.
Great question. So when you enter, you get a wristband based on your relationship status. So green if you're single, red if you're taken. I told my door people if they hesitate, give them yellow. Situationships, whatever, you haven't defined it, you're not sure, give them yellow. Then the poly people said, we want our own wristband. Because of course they did. So now we have poly purple. And I actually think it would be kind of fun if audience members kept saying the wristbands they want and it just becomes sort of an insider thing, because I have a lot of people coming back to multiple shows. I also have a growing queer community in the audience. And so I think I want to start doing like a rainbow wristband or something so they can find each other. And separately, I'm starting to do queer shows, but I also have a couple at every show who is our resident wingman and wingwoman, and they wear actual wings. So if you're a little more introverted, you would never get on stage, but you love comedy, you want to come see the show, you still want to maybe meet people, the wing people help. And there's actually a lot of matches coming out of the audience. My track record on stage is a little more questionable, but and then I introduced the Bachelorette. She gets to bring up her bestie with her to help her weigh in on the men. And there is a notebook on her seat with all the men's names. She can take any notes she wants. And then I introduce each of the men. I brag for them because they can't speak. The first round is a yes or no round. They can only do thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. And if they're also blindfolded, so they can't see what the other bachelors are doing. And I give them a spanking paddle. And if they want the Bachelorette to answer, they raise their paddle. And the comedy really comes not at the expense of the men so much as like the juxtaposition of the questions, right? So I tend to vacillate between asking something relationship oriented. Like I might ask like, do you know your attachment style? And then the very next question is like, have you ever been peed on? It's just something like, and the audience just goes crazy for, all the kinky questions, of course. And audience members can also leave yes or no questions in a hat before the show. So I also I'll take audience questions as well. Next round, I have them do something crafty. I've had them write limericks about their dream first date, haikus about their dream first date. I've had them draw their dream first date. And then I call their moms live on stage. That's one of my favorite parts. It's so fucking fun to call their moms live on stage. These moms are wild. And then I search their phones. And this is, again, one that, the men get really scared. And I'm like, look, behind the scenes, before the show, if you tell me there's an app you don't want me to touch, I don't touch it, right? It's fun for the audience if they think I can just grab your phone and do whatever I want. But, spoiler alert, consent matters. And that's the show. Can you tell I've given that spiel before?
How did you think of this? Where did this come from?
It's interesting because there are some shows that I have a seed of an idea and it takes me forever to figure out what it is. I'm actually kind of slowly developing a new show now, Comedians versus AI. And that one is much harder. And who is the AI person? There's a lot more to deal with. The dating show, I was with my friend Eva. We brainstormed it in 10 minutes, done. And the format is roughly still the same that it was when I launched it 1 year ago. And I think it came out of a lot of dating woes too. Women complain a lot that men don't ask questions. They just talk about themselves. They just, they just take over the date. And it's what if there was a show where the men don't speak? The irony though is that the men who do my show are really good men who are, again, doing the work and want to meet someone and all that kind of stuff. But it came out of our dating woes, but we ironed it out really quickly. One of us was they won't speak. And I was boom, I'll call their mom. And I think Eva was you'll search their phones. You know what I mean? And I found that piece of paper recently where we did that initial brainstorm. And I actually, now I think I've lost it again. I need to find it because it was really fun to read it again and be wow, that is what the show is.
I think the success of your show is a sign of the times. And I love that you're even bringing in, that question. And I imagine there's more educational elements that happen from bringing people together. But when you ask them about, attachment style, do you know your attachment style, or love languages or erotic blueprints? Do you find that there are people leaving with nuggets of wisdom?
I think what's interesting is how this has become common language, which I think is great. So most men know, right? And then there's like, occasionally there's one guy who's like, he can't speak, but he's clearly confused, right? And then we know that he has no idea. So I can't say that they're leaving learning about attachment styles, but I do think what you said is correct, that it's a real sign of the times. I think people are very tired of swiping. But I also think, and part of why I created the show is post-pandemic, I wanted to create something rowdy where people meet each other, and dating lends itself to that. What I think is so interesting too, and the singles aren't going to like this, but half my audience is couples. People are just stoked to get out there and meet people in real life, even the couples. Because the other thing is, if you have a red wristband, I don't want to spoil, I'm already spoiling so much, but I have a job for the people with red wristbands, right? Like they have a responsibility to wing person a single person that night. And it's fun to see how many of them take it really seriously. So I think people are just so excited to be away from their screen. I loved what you said in your intro about you do all these events and you do all these virtual things, but your joy is seeing people in real life. And so is mine. And I think a lot of people feel that way, especially post-pandemic, where they just want to get out and have fun with other humans.
It's funny that you say that a lot of the audience are couples. I remember I'm trying to Google it right now to see if I could find it. But months ago, Yahoo fed me an article about a high percentage. It was over 50% of people who are on dating apps are actually in relationship. So, yeah.
Well, that's different because I have the poly people wear their purple wristband, right? So there are people in relationships who are still looking to date. But then it's interesting the number of red wristbands I have where they're not dating, they're there with their partner, but they're stoked to just see a comedy show and they're stoked about introducing people. Like it's fun how many people will run up to me. There's an after party and say, I introduced 6 singles. You know what I mean? It's like a sport. They get really into it.
I love that. Couples, being the matchmakers, being the wingmen out in the world and supporting those who are currently single and in their love life and elevating their intimacy journey. We need more of that.
Your friends. Totally. Your friends. Yes. And that's the thing is, that's what I say in the show. I'm like, look, out in the real world, the onus always falls on the single people to put themselves out there and put themselves out there and put themselves out there. And so tonight at my show, the onus falls on the red wristbands and they have a job to do. But it's also cute when you buy a ticket, you can leave a fun fact. When you buy a ticket, it says, if you're single and ready to mingle, leave a fun fact. And I incorporate those into the show so I can highlight more singles in the audience. And I love how many red wristbands, how many couples are coming back to the show and they write in that place, not single, but ready to wingman. Like they know the drill and they're ready. And it's really sweet.
Have couples met?
Yes. So quite a few couples have come out of the audience. And there's one couple in particular that met in the November show. That are very seriously dating. And whenever they post on their story that they're like on vacation together, I lose my shit because they met in my audience. But there's a ton of dates coming out of the audience. There's also a lot that I can't track that I'm trying to figure out how to track. And then in particular, my April bachelorette is still dating one of the contestants. So they've been dating for like 5 months and they came back to a future show with his mother, which was so fucking fun.
Oh my God.
And his mom wore a green wristband. And I was like, who wants to be a literal motherfucker tonight? And some guy in the audience was like, I do. And like, I mean, it was like, the show's wild. I never know what's going to happen either. But yeah, I heard out his mom.
What cities is it happening in?
So So I don't know if this is interesting to your listeners, but something I've been thinking a lot about is that actually had an investor approach me about taking the show on a national tour, which felt really exciting. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't know that makes sense for me, but it really got me thinking. And something I love about the show is the word of mouth. Every time I walk up to a stranger and I say, how'd you hear about it? They say, my friend came last month and told me it was the funniest thing they've ever seen. Done. So I realized if I do sort of a traditional tour and I go to Austin and Boston and Nashville and whatever, one time in the year, I'm actually not capitalizing on that. So my new plan and what I've started doing is choosing a couple cities and going back to them like every 2 to 3 months because people are telling their friends. And then once I feel that that city has hit like I can easily fill 150 seats, then I add a new city and keep going to that city, but then I add a new one. So that's my plan now. So I've gone to San Francisco a few times and I don't want to jinx it, but it's selling well in San Francisco now. So I recently added Seattle. Logistically, Seattle doesn't make sense for me, but strategically it makes sense. So I added Seattle. I'm doing my first Seattle show. And then when Seattle starts selling well, I'm going to add probably Portland, San Diego. But people are DMing me from literally around the world being like, when are you coming to France? And I'm like, I'm never going to France. I mean, I'd love to on vacation, but it's a lot harder than people think, as we were saying at the beginning, to find the contestants. So it's like, I also don't want to book out 20 cities and then have to deal with finding, 100 contestants. But if I go back to a city, people tell their friends, they've seen the show. I have a lot of audience members who see it and then apply. So that's my plan now that I've been thinking about is choosing a city, building out that city, then adding another city.
So if anybody is listening to the podcast and you want to be a contestant, or maybe you have somebody in your life who you've identified as a stellar, amazing candidate who's ready, like they're ready to enhance their love life, send them.
You can go to loveisn'tblind.co. The .com was taken. And there's a tab that says be a contestant. There's a short form. And then you send me a video introducing yourself. I will not share that video with anyone. I just kind of have to meet you. But there's another thing. I have to give another shout out to Christina because you were so helpful when the show was nothing. When we first chatted, I had done September and November. I'd done 2 shows, 2. That's it. And I was like desperate to find contestants. And you were like, oh, I got you. And you sent me Jeremy, who's still one of my favorites and is now a friend of mine. And we go climbing together and we see shows together and he's wonderful. And he crushed it. He had a yeah.
Shout out to Jeremy. I love that.
Oh my gosh, he's wonderful. So yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And the show didn't have, now it has all this press. I don't think it had anything when you were like, I got you.
So did you watch Love, it's the TV show. Is it Love Isn't Blind?
I've never seen it. Everyone's like, you've never seen it? I know. Here's the thing. I've never seen it. I don't really like those kinds of shows. Everyone's like, why are you doing this then? To me, what I'm creating is so different, right? It's a live experience. Everyone's meeting. It's very silly. It's comedic. It's joyful. I mean, I will admit, though, the other reason why I don't watch those shows is I know they're addictive, right? Like if I watch episode 1 of Love is Blind, next thing you know, 30 hours of my life will be gone. I don't want to start. But I am making fun of it a little, right? Because like when I heard the concept that you get engaged before seeing each other, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. And then of course they chose beautiful people. I'm like, all right.
They miss
not
all
the social
type
experiment
of
you think.
Yeah, and they miss all type of ways to educate the people that are going through this experience. It's like a can you bring a therapist on the show?
Oh,
like,
so
please.
that I have done. So you asked about education. I have had a few talkbacks, which have been really wonderful. I actually want to organize some more. But in particular, one of my bachelorettes, I mentioned she gets to bring her bestie up on stage with her to help her weigh in on the men. And her bestie was Caitlin V., who is a sex and intimacy coach, whom Christina, you should really connect with. I'm happy to introduce you. And she has a show on Discovery Plus, and she focuses on men's sexual wellness and intimacy, and she's amazing. And so I met her because she was, I Zoom not just with the bachelorette, but with the friend, just to make sure everyone's comfortable. They know what's going to happen on stage. And she was fabulous. And I was like, would you want to give a talk back? And she said, sure. And she was amazing. So I've been also on my Instagram, I've been slowly releasing clips of our talk back as well. So, and then I had a second talk back with someone else, Melanie Curtin, who she has a podcast called Dear Men. This is someone else you should probably connect with, Christina, and she's lovely. So I've been doing a few talk backs so that there is that educational element and people can ask whatever they want. And it's been great. So, after the show, people are asking about ethical non-monogamy practices and different questions about arousal and eroticism. And it's been really actually a lovely component to have after the show.
So you're an advocate for love and healthy relating, and you're also an advocate for breakups.
Yeah, I am. And I think that's part of it. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that, sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let go. And people will often stay in pretty toxic things way too long. But you're referencing my show, How to Break Up by Text. And, spoiler alert, my thing is do not break up by text. But it's wild how many people do it. So I'm also just an advocate of like communication, which, I'm not an expert, but I very much worry is becoming a bit of a lost art. And like the thing about breaking up by text is that is an experience. Breaking up deserves empathy. It deserves a conversation. And when you do it by text, you're taking the easy road out, right? When you really, if you really sit with yourself, you're sending a text because you don't have to face their voice and their face and their emotions, right? But it's like, easy road out is not necessarily the right one. Although I will say if it's really early on, I think text is great, right? Like if we've been on 2 dates, I don't need you to break up with me to my face. You know what I mean? So there is a time and place, but I'm seeing long-term relationships end by text where the people feel blindsided.
Well, it's better to end by text than just ghost them completely because I've heard those
100%.
Stories.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I will say like running the show has held my feet to the fire where there are times where it's like, because sometimes there's the accidental ghost, right? You're like, oh, I should really respond to this. I'll do it later. And then you've accidentally ghosted. But doing this show, I'm like, Allie, you got to fucking write them back, even if it's just one date. Because we've all been there, the anxiety of like waiting for a text and being like, is he going to text me? Is she going to text me? Like, what's happening? And you're like letting you're like the pressure, you're letting out, you're releasing that if you respond.
What have you seen in these breakup texts? Like what is the most interesting, crazy trend that you see happening with people breaking up that way?
It's a great question because I still have a favorite go-to story that was so wild. But in terms of trends, I think again, I think the trend is that they're happening more, right? And it's interesting in the podcast. So I used to have a live show, How to Break Up by Text, and I'd have a guest comedian and we would perform and analyze your breakups on the spot. And if you submit live, you get a free shot. So shots for shots. And I also projected my real phone number. And if you were a little shy, but you wanted to share, you could text me your screenshots live and we would perform and analyze them. And people said it was strangely cathartic, right? Because you'd hear a whole room of strangers agree with you or not. And then I sold that show, and the format now in the podcast that's coming out is celebrities perform your breakup text, and then an expert joins and we break down your breakup. But what I was trying to get at, sorry, I'm so long-winded, is that now I've spoken to people of all ages. So it's also interesting the Gen Z's people I've spoken to as well don't like this. You know what I mean? Like, a really interesting trend is that Gen Z is already experimenting with like polyamory and stuff like that. Which I feel like when I was 22, like nobody was doing, right? But the younger generation is in on it.
Well, polyamory, two things. Number one, it's a safe word. And number two, it's dating. That's essentially what you're doing is dating.
Yeah.
And you're experimenting, you're being non-committal because to jump into an exclusive relationship after, 3 times of seeing somebody is limiting.
Crazy.
And yeah, it's so and also too, in the practice of polyamory, there's authentic communication around it. You're not hiding that, in normal dating scenarios, oftentimes people really don't tell them that you're dating somebody else. And there's like this withholding of information. And when you study polyamory, that's part of it, that they practice this being fully transparent and authentic. Like, I'm dating multiple people. Well, they say I'm polyamory. And I just was at Burning Man recently and I had a moment with a man there. And he said he was poly, and I just laughed. And I was like, oh, that means you just haven't met the person that you want to. And I get it. Some people this lifetime may not want one person, but a lot of people, the idea of identifying with a relationship style, that's not your identity. Like, I am not polyamory. I'm not monogamy. Like,
well, that's something Dan
monogamous.
Savage talks about a lot that I love. He's like, look, I'm gay. You know, he says, you know, he's gay and, you know, he was discriminated against. There was the AIDS epidemic, you know what I mean? And he's like, you know, he has some funny rants about how, you know, the people identifying as poly. And it's like, is this an innate thing that you're being discriminated against and you can't change? It's kind of different. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, though, that you said you just haven't met the right person. So do you think that if people meet the right person, they then end up defaulting to monogamy?
Well, I think it's a flow, like you're flowing in and out. So I recently had an experience where I was dating somebody and we're dating, and then somebody else entered the picture and we were dating. And so I was unsure about the situation. He's like, oh, I guess we're poly. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll explore that experience. And so I had the experience of poly with inside of that, but it's like this ebbs and flow for me. I think it's really hard to begin two relationships from my experience at the same time. Like,
you know, I also think polyamorous might be a misnomer in the sense that a lot of the people I know doing poly, it's more like they have their partner, their primary partner, and then they just sleep with other people. You know what I mean? Whereas polyamorous really is you are in love and dating two people. Although I also know people that do that. So
I just think that there's like, when you start a relationship, it's best to ground in to that experience before opening up. And I do have couples that I admire who've been together for a significant amount of time. And I also, you know, the longest relationship I've had is 5 years. So anything like beyond that, and I remember towards the end of that 5-year relationship that I was curious about how we can enliven our sex life. and now, thank goodness there's, you know, Kimmy Inch's Something More, or there's, you know, conscious play parties, and kink is on the rise, and there's places you can go and experiment. You can go get a unicorn with your significant other. So there's lots of things that you can do, but, you know, I think sometimes the fear, I actually was just talking to a guy friend recently about this. He has been dating somebody for a year, and she's open to, I just had to pause. My door just got slammed shut. I think I was being very loud in a communal space in that moment. But my... they
don't want to join? We're talking about poly.
Totally. She's going to priestess school right now. I have someone around the corner going to priestess school.
Wait, what kind of priest? Okay, we're sorry. Continue your thought.
But yeah, so he's been dating somebody for a year, and she's not necessarily one who's interested in exploring eroticism together. And it's hard to go into someone and be like, you know, choose me, and for the rest of our life, we're only going to have sex with each other. And that's it.
I'm on the same page as you in the sense that people have said like, oh, are you poly? Would you ever be poly? And I'm like, that's something that I envision I would decide with a monogamous partner 5-10 years down the line when we are both bored.
Exactly. Yes.
And still love each other. But like, you know, we've fucked each other a lot of times at that point. So that's how I believe it would work for me, if ever. But the idea of entering into something, I also think it's so funny the number of dudes I see on Hinge that are like, I'm ethically non-monogamous. And I'm like, bro, you're on here because you can't even find the first girlfriend, okay? And I'm just like, I don't know, entering into that from the start. Sometimes I do think ethically non-monogamous in a lot of scenarios is just like a rebranding of fuckboy. I'm like, all right, you're on Hinge just trying to find multiple ladies.
Well, I'm on Raya, and Raya, there's so many people on Raya that are here for just friends. And I find
fascinating.
I find that an interesting, I'm always like, what do I do with this person? Because I could say, I want to be friends with you first too. Like, I don't want to jump in and into a commitment, but I think that's even part of the safe words as well.
The other thing is like, I'm always looking for new friends, but not on the apps. Because it's, again, goes back to what you said at the very beginning of the episode. You were saying if you want people who are interested in longevity, go to this event. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're interested in friends, get out there in the real world and meet friends. You know what I mean? Like, is that really harsh? I don't know. I'm blessed with a very wonderful friend group, and I'm always making new friends, but it's because I'm always going to, my friends joke that it's like, I'm so booked up. Like, I already have tickets to 2 different shows next week, but I love seeing shows. I love going to events, and I'm not on the apps for friends, although frankly, now that I'm doing this show, I'm like, I can't remember the last time I swiped.
How's your love life?
I've actually reached this, my love life's fine. I've reached a great point where I don't care. For a long time, I cared so much, and I really wanted to meet someone. And then I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Like, first of all, I love performing. I love rock climbing. And I'm like, man, if I just performed and climbed every day, I'm having a great life. You know what I mean? I'm like, whatever. I've also dated so many men with so many issues that sometimes I'm like, this is great. You know what I mean? I'm just dating me, and that's great. I'm very open if someone comes along, but I've really something flipped for me where I'm not sad about it, which is a wonderful place to be. I also think as you get older, you see a lot of marriages fall apart. And I had a friend who said to me, she said, for her being married, she's like, I was in a prison of my own design. And those words really stuck with me. I'm like, wow. And look, of course, I know many beautiful, happy marriages, but especially I think as women, we're told that we have to get this thing. We're told that we want this thing. We're told that our value is tied up in this thing. And I have a lot of friends who did the thing and got there, and they're like, this is it. So it's been really interesting to hear that. I also think, again, women 30s and up, they're told that they are bottom of the barrel. They are told they've failed. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think people in happy relationships have won. Then I think there's single people right underneath that. Then under them are the people in unhappy relationships. And under them are the people who are married in unhappy. You know what I mean? We're fine. Stop telling single women that we're a problem. We're good.
Yeah, congratulations. It's like, if you're not in a fucked up relationship, congratulations. There's nothing that you need to get out of. There's no exit plan that you're planning. I think there's something there's this interesting image. I've noticed, during the pandemic, I went home to Maryland and lived with my parents during that.
We've discussed
period.
This before. I feel like I had the same reaction because I'm also from Maryland, but I feel like we've discussed this before.
So when I was there was a time where I was on the dating apps. I'm like, I've got to figure out this area of my life. There has to be something more. And then once I moved and left Maryland, and I'm now in Austin, I'm surrounded by friends. I love my work, and I'm fine single. I'm so fulfilled in my existence because my friends are around, and I have immersive activities to do. In Maryland, there's no ecstatic dance or cacao ceremony or women's circle. It's just a bunch of people drinking at bars. Here, I have a greater social life, and I am so immersed in my work that I'm content. Now, on the other spectrum, sometimes, when I'm in a relationship, I recently transitioned. If you listen to a few episodes ago, there's one I did on intimate reflections, and I, did a rampage on sharing an experience of transitioning out of a relationship. And as I was breaking that bond between us, it felt as though there was this human camping out in my brain. And it's prime real estate. When you're dating, and especially you're in a relationship and you're trying to figure out, is this has long-term, is this healthy for me? And in that query, it's this it's like almost it's not the nail in the head, but it's like this thing that's pressure on side of you. And I've recently come out of it and I've released it. I went to Burning Man. I rewired my brain and had multiple experiences. I was in Los Angeles with friends, and now I feel like this release, like I've gotten this spaciousness back in my head. And so I'm also at a point I'm like, wow, like I need a break before I let somebody else in.
Yeah, there are two things you just said that resonated hardcore with me. So yeah, I was in a situation, we were starting to date this spring and I was so into the guy. And it was like, and then things were great. And then suddenly they weren't, right? And the amount of real estate that it took up in my brain. And then it was like, holy shit, like when you're not taking up that real estate, I'm having a great time doing all these other things, you know what I mean? Putting on more shows. And so, yeah, that was also part of my flip where I was like, I don't, if someone amazing comes along, but otherwise it's like, you don't deserve this real estate that I could fill up with happy things. The other thing you said about Maryland, I also really relate to. And I feel this way about New York as well. Like I feel that the East Coast is more traditional, which a lot of your listeners might come at me. I just feel like when I was living in New York, at a certain point, everyone gets married and they move to Jersey or Connecticut and maybe upstate New York, or you're single forever. And also we could have a separate conversation about the demographics of dating in New York. And I felt much more judged for being single in New York. California was such an amazing positive shift in my life. I moved to California and I'm meeting all these people who for better communes, you know what I mean? It's like I moved and it's like I have, adult friends and they're not, sure you could, it's like they're not roommates, right? They like live in a house with a yard and they live like adults and they have these beautiful lives and they support each other. Like there's just so many alternative lifestyles here that I just felt like I fit in so much more. I felt so welcome. I felt so much less judged for, not hitting these traditional milestones. So yeah, I think getting out of the East Coast was the best. But it's interesting because New York bills itself as this very like cosmopolitan city. And I don't know, I think it's kind of just become a city of finance and law and you're expected to, do all the things everyone else does.
Yeah, I don't imagine that the most healthy relationships have come out of that city. There's a lot of, that ambitious mentality and subbing out that area of your life or just wanting to solve it and check it off the box. Like I found the person, it's done. This is great. Let's move on with our life now. And then all shit breaks loose, 2 years into it, they're over each other and then they're repressing some pieces of themselves to fit in that prison box, which they've created for themselves to stay in that relationship. Because, just as though self-care has been, a trend for years now, your relationship requires a we care practice. You can't just put it on autopilot and think it's going to be an amazing journey with somebody else. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think about that sometimes when it's like, because being single can feel like work. And it's like, I don't think it's any more or less work than like when you're in a relationship. Because when I was in a serious relationship, it was like that was a time commitment as well. I don't know. But another long-winded answer to my dating life. I'm having a great time being single. Although, for better or worse, what they say is true. Like now it's like everywhere I go, I get asked out. That sounded so obnoxious, but it's like now that I like don't care, you know what I mean? But I don't know.
Do you want kids?
Not really, which is actually very helpful because I think, I understand women in their, getting older and really wanting kids, and that becomes a major stressor. But so in my early 20s, I used to joke that I wanted kids at the last biologically feasible moment and or when I'm rich enough to have other people take care of them. And then my friends, my girls were like, maybe you don't want them. And I was like, huh. Because it's another thing that like women are told from birth, right? They're like, you're going to grow up, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, you're going to be a wife and a mother. And like, I mean, it's interesting because like feminism is really pretty new. And I think we take it for granted. Like we were born into a world that we were told had equality, but like it's quite new, and so yeah, it was sort of this funny moment where my friends were like, I don't think you want kids. And it was like, it hadn't even occurred to me that was like allowed or a possibility, but I've never daydreamed about them. I don't see where they fit in my life. I mean, I want to hold space for the possibility that I'll like meet the love of my life and he really wants them. And we have such a great partnership that then finally I see how they fit. But like, I do find also that when I go on first dates with men who are like, I really want kids, it like freaks me out. Like I feel like the man in the situation, you know what I mean? Where I feel that conversely, I'll have men that we go on a couple dates and then they kind of sit me down and they're like, I have something important to tell you. Like, I've really thought about this and I don't want kids. And they think it's going to be like a deal breaker. And I'm like, yeah, cool. What are we ordering?
As I would love to be a mother. And I'm 42. I haven't frozen my eggs, no desire to do it. I did months ago get my fertility checked and they said, you're like 35, you'll be fine. Do you want to get your eggs frozen now? And I'm like, no, I'm not freezing my eggs at this point. Like I haven't done it. If God wants me to.
Also, I went to get my physical yesterday and the woman without prompting told me your fertility is pretty good till 46. So you have time.
Amazing. Yeah. So, and for me, the healthy relationship is primary. Like I want that first. I'm not running. I don't need to adopt children or foster them. I mean, I am a bootstrapping startup founder, so it's not ideal to bring children into the world at this stage. And I would also be content at this stage of my life if somebody had children and they, we're bonding and getting along. They're like, you know what? I have 2 children. You can be their bonus mom. And I would take that. I'm like, great.
I'm down to date men who already have kids because I feel like I joke with my friend. My friends are like, but Allie, then you like are responsible for kids. And I'm like, no. If he already has kids and he has like a healthy relationship with his ex/baby mama, then the pattern is like, if the kid's 6 or like the pattern has been established that kid has 2 parents and it's not me. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's almost like, then I'm like the fun auntie, right? And that's all I want.
Yeah, you're
so
the
if he
bonus.
already has kids and I pop in as fun auntie, fine. So men, if you already have kids, holler at me. That's fine. I was thinking of I actually haven't updated there's nothing about kids one way or another on my dating profile, but I think I was actually thinking recently, although I haven't really been swiping lately, but I was thinking I should update it and be like, I don't really want them of my own, but if you already have them, that's cool.
Do you promote your show on the dating apps?
So I'm only on Hinge because I just feel like there's such a time suck that even when I was like actively swiping, I just didn't feel like doing multiple. And I feel like you see the same people on there. So I'm only on Hinge. I haven't really swiped in a while, but it says one of the prompts, it says, I forget what the prompt is, but I filled it out and it's what if I told you if, and I wrote something along the lines of, I'm genuinely looking for myself, but if you're not interested and I'm not your type, no problem. Let me set you up. I run a dating show. loveisn'tblind.co. And I think I also say, sorry for the shameless plug. But the thing is, like, especially running this dating show, first of all, running this dating show has made me far less jaded about dating. I thought it was going to make me more jaded. It's made me far less jaded. And it's made me super aware of like the number of small things that are just out of your control. Like some men, they like quiet brunettes. And it's like, oh, you're not gonna like me. That's fine. Let me set you up. So I've had some men apply through Hinge.
I feel that too, if working in the dating space. Like, yeah, it didn't make me more jaded. It made me more optimistic about, the experience. There's so many great guys out there. There's so many great women out there as well. And nothing is to be taken personal in this experience. It's, and also too, when you're in it, you release a little of like, you just know somebody is next going to be right around the corner. Like you don't have to get so tight about it. And I did, when we first met, I was hosting Underground Unattached, which was the curated dating experience from 2014 to 2016 in LA and New York. And I would use the dating apps. I mean, the first Underground Unattached event that we did in 2014, I had 18 men walk straight out of Tinder. But now I have been kicked off
Okay,
of.
maybe I need to do this. Yeah.
I've been kicked off of
For promoting.
Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and Happen. I can't get on any of them. That's why I'm on Raya, because Raya will let me in. I
so
do have
funny.
something like in my profile that says similar to you. Like if we're not a match, I also am a private matchmaker and relationship coach and run Redeepen. But I definitely have to let them know that I am currently single and I'm not here to just set them up.
Yeah. Like I'm not here as like an ad. I set up profile up on Field that was basically just an ad and it got flagged immediately. And I was like, oh, I'm a dum-dum. Of course it did. You know, it didn't even have my name. It was like the name was Love Isn't Blind. Because in Field, they ask you for like pseudonyms and stuff. But anyway, it got flagged immediately. But yeah, it's made me less jaded. I'm meeting amazing single people all the time, even if they're not for me, just knowing that there are so many great people out there. And I think it's really easy, especially if you're heterosexual, to only date men and have a bunch of bad experiences and then vilify men and be like, all men are messes, all men are trash, all men are fuckboys. And I think it's really easy for men to have a bunch of bad experiences with women and then be like, oh, women are crazy. But now that you probably feel this way, it's so fascinating to interview people across the sexuality and gender spectrum while not being on a date with them. It's really sort of wonderful and eye-opening. And when you do encounter those messes, they also are across the gender and sexuality spectrum. So it makes it a lot harder to vilify when you're like, no, this is just everybody, right? And I've also now seen firsthand a lot of the things that my guy friends complain about, which I knew intellectually was true. But to see it firsthand, there's also something that I find really uplifting also about seeing how my gender is fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, for me, it's something actually like that became very positive in my life.
What's something that how has this particular show changed you?
I think that's a lovely question. And I think it has made me much more positive about dating. It's made me less jaded. I think it's made me, I don't know. It's been so fucking fun to like bring joy to people. Like I keep the show so wild and silly. Like I could talk about the show itself forever, but like, you know, as I was saying, I have these fun facts where I do some crowd work with the audience and get other singles meeting each other. I don't know, for how it's changed me, it's made me just more positive and confident. I mean, that's also just something as a performer that like, you know, there's just something so exhilarating about doing like a bang up show. I mean, I worry that I'm going to jinx it when I say stuff like this, but the show from start to finish is bananas and it's so fun. I can't wait to do it tomorrow again. You know, I don't know. I hope I think it's made me more open. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling. I just think it's made me more confident and positive.
Congratulations. You're so bold.
I'm like looking for something deeper. I don't know if there's something deeper than that. You know what I mean? But it has been a really positive experience. I think it's a large part of why I care less about dating. I'm like, I'm having a blast performing and rock climbing. I'm obsessed with rock climbing. If anyone wants to climb with me, let me know.
Yeah, you're so bold. You're so courageous. Congratulations on what you have created. We're going to continue to share the Love Isn't Blind experience through the We Deepen Network. And if anyone's listening and they do want to join, Allie is going to do her best to put the We Deepen promo code wherever there's a checkout, and you can go and attend the event with a special rate.
Yes, across shows, We Deepen. Christina knows this, but sometimes I deal with venues where they handle the ticketing and then it's like a slog, but I handle 90% of the ticketing now. So We Deepen. Also, if you want to see clips for the show, I'm at Allie_Goldie across platforms, ALLI_GOLDI. And so you can see tons of clips of the show. And then if you want to buy tickets, learn more, apply to be a contestant, please, please, please. I'll make you look fabulous. You'll get tons of dates. It's loveisn'tblind.co.
If anybody applies to be a contestant and you share a little video clip of them after, tag We Deepen in that or collaborate with us, because I want to share that as well. Like, let's promote the people.
Oh, you mean like once they're on stage?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love your Instagram. It's hilarious.
Oh, thank you. Well, Jeremy's clip is still up there. He had a great moment. he did the December show. And so I have a round that like changes up. I change it up. It's like kind of the creative round. And so, the Love Actually note cards that have also been parodied a million places. So I told the boys, I tell them on stage like they're hearing it for the first time, but behind the scenes, I said, this is the scene we're going to parody. I linked to the video. I gave them some tips. Anyway, I said, share a secret. And he wrote, and his timing was perfect. You can go see the clip. Maybe I'll reshare it when this comes out and tag you. But he says, I don't have many secrets. And he flips the card. But one thing I know is that I will always go down on you first. The audience lost their fucking minds.
Good man. Good man.
Just the way the audience erupted was amazing. So yes, Jeremy was wonderful, and he comes from the We Deepen Network. So yeah, come on out.
Come on out. Allie, thank you so much for joining us and for doing what you do. This was such an enjoyable conversation.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for doing what you do.
Oh, and thank you everybody for listening to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate it, give it 5 stars. It helps more people find it, helps me continue to record it, and come and meet us in person. Go check out A Love Isn't Blind. Check out that calendar at We Deepen. I'd love to see you in real life because this podcast connecting digitally with you in this way is wonderful, but there's nothing better than being in person with you. And maybe we all go rock climbing together as well. Okay. Bye for now.